Hi, this is Billy Wagner, and this is the Phillies Show.
Ruben Amaro Jr., Jim Salisbury, Todd Zolecki, brought to you by the Foul Territory Network. How is everybody doing? I hope you are doing well. The holidays are almost here, just days away, and we have a special gift for all of you. Last week, we spent some time with former Phillies closer Billy Wagner. Billy Wagner, who's going to find out next month, January 21st, to be specific, 6 p.m. Eastern on MLB Network, if he has finally been inducted into the National Baseball Hall of Fame. Billy is in his 10th and final year of eligibility with the BBWAA. He fell 5 votes short last year, or earlier this year, I should say, so he has a great chance of getting in. Obviously, he hopes to get in. Jim, Ruben, and I all think he is worthy of getting in. Billy pitched for the Phillies 2004, 2005, made the NL All-Star team in 2005. Before we start this interview, I want to kind of just read to you some of the stats on Billy's career and why I think he's Hall of Fame worthy. 8th in baseball history, 422 saves. Finished his career with a 2.31 ERA. It's second lowest in baseball history of any pitcher with 750 or more career innings. The only pitcher better, Mariano Rivera. Billy Wagner, first in baseball history in strikeouts per 9 innings, 900 more career innings, 11.9 strikeouts per 9 innings. Lowest opponent's batting average against, 0.187. Highest strikeout rate, 33.2%. And when you look at those strikeout numbers for Billy Wagner, and you look at the guys just below him on the list, they're all current modern-day pitchers. Blake Snell, Chris Sale, Robbie Ray, Jacob deGrom, Max Scherzer. Billy was a unicorn in a day when guys did not blow 100-mile heaters, nasty sliders past everybody. Billy Wagner did it, and we wanted to have Billy on for quite a long time. Billy's a lot of fun to cover. Obviously, he's dominating the back end of the bullpen, but also a very candid person, a good person in general. And one of my favorite stories in baseball history involves Billy Wagner and Jim Salisbury, spring training of 2005. Stay tuned. You're going to love that one. Billy Wagner, everybody. Billy Wagner, man, thank you so much for joining the Phillies Show. We're so excited to have you. It's the holiday season, which means a lot of family stuff, of course. And what a great year for you and your family. Your son, Will, makes his big league debut with the Blue Jays. Your daughter's playing college hoops at Winthrop. What's this past year been like for you? And of course, down the road, hopefully next month, you find out if you're going to make the Hall of Fame.
Well, the most stressful thing is watching your kids. So, we have our months off that we get to actually relax and enjoy really life. But when our kids are into the sports, it's about 24/7, either hoping for a hit, hoping for a basket, getting, it's an up and down parent time, I would say. And so, really, as much as my kids probably keep up with the Hall of Fame more than I do, I ain't got time. I'm coaching, I'm following them. When you become a coach, you become, you're a shrink, you're a personal trainer, you're a maintenance guy. So literally it's a 24-hour job at times.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk about the Hall of Fame, but I did want to ask you about Will's big league debut in August. Did you get to the game? It was in LA. Did you get there in time? Did you not get there?
No, we got there. It was great. It was we driven down from Buffalo on that Saturday, and we get a phone call later that night saying, "Hey, I'm going to the big leagues," and as luck would have it, it's in Anaheim. So, and so trying to coordinate that and get everybody there was quite a job, but it all worked out. We were all excited. I don't know who was more nervous, though. I think my wife or his fiance. I'm a pitcher, so when I look at hitters, I'm like, dude, you got 4 shots of this thing, maybe 5 each night. Come on, let's work in. Let's go. And so, but that first one, get that first one out of the way, and then just to have the debut he had, that is pretty special.
Not only did he get it out of the way, he swung at the first pitch and just ripped a double into the gap in right center field. I mean, he was not messing around. That was pretty cool.
Well, his mom didn't raise a fool. He's looking hard. Look hard, baby.
Billy, I can't imagine the thrill you must have felt and you must feel to see your son play in the big leagues. How does it compare to the thrill when you got the call and made your debut?
I think circumstances were completely different, but for me, it was every step I took was new. I had no idea what I was doing, what I was getting into. There was no preparation for what I was about to get into. For Will, is probably more enjoyable because you know the path, and he has a little bit more guidance of what to do and how to do it, what not to do, and things like that. And so the guidance is something that I think makes a big difference. So he's able to sit there and understand things when, like when trades happen and you're like, hey, there's probably more to this trade than you know. So don't overthink this. When trades were going on, when I was playing, I had no idea what I was doing. When I got traded, I didn't understand that. It was, it was a personal thing where I'm able to sit there and tell Will, hey, this is business. These are the good things. These are, anytime somebody's wanting you, that's a good thing. So I think, being able to take this journey with Will, I mean, really from start to finish, when you look at him being on the field and taking ground balls, all the way up when I was with the Phillies, I mean, shagging and really understanding that locker room to where he's at today. I think it's helped him to be able to handle his emotions a little bit better.
Well, Billy, I'm sorry. Great to have you with us. So good to see you. I had a lot of emotions when I called my father and made that phone call. Tell me exactly what thread, I've talked to my dad since then and now he's passed, but I keep that and hold that close to my heart. But tell me exactly what you were feeling and what were the circumstances behind that phone call?
Well, you know how emotional I am. I'm very emotional about my kids. And so when you get that phone call, and you see how much they've worked and, just like your father watched how hard you've worked to get to fulfill your dream, that one moment to be there. I mean, to be able to share that's priceless. That's something that you hold on, like you said, for a long time, just to be part of that. And so, and that's the joy of this whole battle to get to the big leagues, to have that joy. And that's what I've pushed along with him. As I said, smile a lot more today. Every day you wake up, you 0 for 4, you can still smile because you're in the big leagues.
That's right. Billy, Jim and I were talking a little earlier, and because we do have two generation baseball families here. Ruben's dad, of course, played in the big leagues. You played in the big leagues. I'm wondering, and each of you can maybe answer this question: how much do you think just being blessed physically had to do with maybe Will's success, Ruben with your success? Versus just being around a dad who played in the big leagues and can say, no. This is how you catch a ground ball. This is how you hit the baseball. This is the best way to throw a ball. Just having that super expertise that can maybe kind of push them in the right direction.
Go ahead, Ruben. You probably know more about those things.
Well, I mean, for me, honestly, it was less genes, I think, even though my grandfather played in the big leagues or not in the big leagues, but was a Hall of Fame type player. Couldn't play in the big leagues because of the color of his skin. But I think more than anything else, it was about me being exposed to the game and sort of being taught, how to manage your effort to get to the big leagues, and sort of just being around the game itself and falling in love with it had a lot more to do with my overall talent. We were different types of players. I was a switch hitter. I ran pretty well. My dad was a great infielder. I was not a great infielder. And so they tossed me into the outfield. So I think it was probably the latter of those two things, Todd, for me, like the love of the game and just being around the game and watching these, amazing players perform, in the late 70s and early 80s in Philadelphia. I mean, some of the best players in the history of our organization, the Schmidts and Boas and Carltons and those kind of guys, and just being around it had more of an effect, I think, on me. You, Billy?
Oh, I agree. I tell you, when a young kid gets to walk into a locker room, you got Jimmy Rollins, Chase Utley, David Bell, Tommy, guys that can give you a lasting impression, along with the ride of your career, sitting in a locker room of that caliber, Biggio Bagwell, things like that. I mean, things like that rub off on you, not maybe in physical, but I mean, how you see them handle you, as a father, a lot of times I'm going, hey, that's who you want to emulate right there. Look at those guys, see how they handled their business, Plus, being in the big league clubhouse allows guys to take you out there. Jimmy Williams used to take Will out to the field and hit him ground balls. So it's who and what you're talking to and subjecting them to. And so, me being a pitcher, thank God I didn't rub off on them so that they could really enjoy what they're doing. So I think that was part of, the experience and the journey is just putting him in a situation where he's around people that, that he sees as quality and emulates. And I think there's things that he does that, when I look back, I go, I might have played with a guy like that. So, I like that. I think, he's a whole lot of, I think one of my favorite players ever and teammates was Chase Utley. We always hit it off when we were there, and just to watch. And I think I look at Will in more of that fashion, who's not going to be flashy. He's going to do what you got to get done, and he's going to do it the best he can. And so and no excuses. So I think you can only be happy if you find people that he looks up to that are as quality as a guy like Chase.
Billy, it's funny because we've had a lot of former players on that, former Chase teammates, and he gets mentioned maybe more than anybody on this show. Do you have a Chase Utley story that immediately comes to mind when you think of Chase or somebody asks you about him?
I don't know if there's a story. I think it's just what he did every day, how he handled himself every day. I don't think there's a story or a particular thing that stands out. I know that when I joined the Phillies and got to be around Chase, he didn't break with us right out of the gate. And I remember me and Boa, and it was like, what are we doing? Clearly this dude's a dude. Let's go. And it only took a matter of time for him to come up there and do what he, and when he got there, it was never overwhelmed. I just like how he went about his business. I think there's a lot to be said about going out there and not having to beat your chest to do things, and I think there's a quality to that. But there's a fierce competitor in that too. He was one not to mess with. He wanted to beat you, and he did what it took to. He really was a throwback. He was a, that 70s, 80s throwback. How he played was Larry Boa, in a prime. He was hard nosed.
You were there when Jimmy, Chase, and Ryan Howard were really just coming of age. What was it like to watch them as young players on the threshold of greatness?
Well, I think watching them, you knew it was just going to be a matter of maturation of time until they caught up with how to handle what they got coming at them. Commitments on and off the field, plus production, plus expectations. That's a lot to throw on some of these young kids. And, it took some guys a long time. When Ryan Howard came up, he came up and told me and pretty much took Jim's spot. And the kid goes and hits 22 home runs in a month and a half. And you're like, holy God, what just happened there? And so you see it coming. But there was an era there that when those kids came up, there was a way different mentality. They never seemed overwhelmed or beat up by the situation. They knew how to handle it. And so that was fun to watch those guys. I went to Jimmy's very first All-Star game in Seattle. We were there, and I remember sitting with him trying to help him figure out how to get jerseys for his team. And I mean, there's, those are great journeys together that when you look back, it's fun to see how far they've come along and how awesome they were to play against.
Hey, Billy, I just wanted to sort of compare. You've been around some great players, and you mentioned before Bagwell, BGO. I think you were around Caminetti. I'm not sure. Was it Cammy as well? Tell me, compare those guys with, the Chase Utleys and the Rollinses and the Howards of the world, because there's some great players there too, man.
Well,
unbelievable.
I think if you're comparing those guys, I don't know if there's anybody that compares to Caminetti, because he was just so. I mean, he's an ultimate competitor, ultimate teammate. But I mean, he could stare holes through your brain. I mean, he had the death stare, and I mean, he was as intimidating a teammate as I've ever had. But I tell you, he definitely had your back. When I think about guys like. Chase reminds me a lot of like Baggy. Hey, I just went around, did my job. Here's what I do: made the play, hit a home run, did these things, stole the base when I needed to. Where when you watch like Biggio was a little bit more active. I mean, you could see him. He was chirpy at times, and he could get after you a little bit like Jimmy. I mean, not as flashy, probably not as athletic by far as Jimmy. But I mean, that whole era had that talent. And I think what we've seen as the progression of baseball up to this point is just the amount of consistent talent that you're seeing day in and day out, where, there's things that as an old player, and I'm sure older players look at as far as, a little bit more flashy. The talent on a whole is completely different than it's ever been, in my opinion, just watching the guys who come to the plate and hit the ball so hard, and the guys who throw hard, and the guys who run. I mean, I just think the talent is so unbelievable. And, but it's kind of like the discussion of the Michael Jordan and LeBron. And, of course, I'm a Michael Jordan fan. So when you look at that, or an Iverson fan, when you look in that era, those guys were different, played different. And, you have a Pete Rose who would take out a catcher in the All-Star game, where now today's games are a smidge different, but the quality of what you face daily is so impressive.
Billy, I think I want to know if one of the biggest thrills of your Phillies career was catching Jim Salisbury catching your bullpen session in spring training in 2005. Do you remember this at all?
Absolutely. How
okay.
could you not? I mean, you know what? I told Jim all along it wasn't going to be a big deal. I said, it's going to be easy. You're going to walk up and go, Jesus Christ, why doesn't he get lit up more often? But I mean, it really, I mean, when, I remember catching flat grounds for guys like Kimbrel and Lidge and guys like that. But when guys can throw balls around you, you're just like, okay, it's different. I mean, I wouldn't want to catch Aroldis Chapman's for I mean, he's literally thrown from 5 feet from me. But I think, once you get used to those guys, and I think Jim was he was so excited. And I was like, I just don't. The only thing that I think was going to give him a hard time was a breaking ball, in which he was like, whoa, wait a minute. But I mean, what do you expect? I told Jim, I said, now you really know that it's not a big deal.
Well, I got to tell you, I was there and witnessed the whole thing, and it was quite the spectacle. We did it right there in the right next to the Hatfield where they do it. I think Jimmy handled himself extremely well, man.
Absolutely.
I think he did a heck of a job. I mean, I was really impressed. That little Barney Rubble looking fella, he did a nice job, boy.
I mean, you said that.
Well,
you said that.
Well, I mean, so for people that don't know the whole story, Jim in spring training where he comes up to me one day. He's like, I think I'm going to go ask Billy if I could catch one of his bullpen sessions. And I'm like, okay, good luck. And he came back. He's like, holy crap. He said yes. And then, Jim, you could take it the rest of the way. You had to go through a process before you could actually catch him.
Well, I wanted to do it because Billy, when you were young, people said, oh, Billy Wagner is just a power arm. He's a thrower. And I knew that used to rankle you and kind of tick you off because you really worked hard to be a pitcher and develop that great slider and your command and everything. You were a student of pitching. And so all winter long, I'm thinking of, I want to write this story. I want to catch it. the bullpen and write a story about it and show people there's more to this guy than just a rear back and fire. And I rehearsed the entire sales pitch all winter long in my head. And then I go to Billy's locker, and typical Billy, down to earth, regular dude, most regular dude ever, jeans and cowboy boots. I laid out my entire pitch, and he goes, "Okay, when you want to do it?" And I'm like, that easy? So I had to sign a waiver form where, like, in the second sentence, the word death was in there. And so, I had been a catcher as a kid, and my biggest fear, Billy, I knew I could do it with the hands because I know how to catch a ball.
Right.
But my fear was my eyes. And so I went to Todd and I said, "Todd," Billy said yes. And we had about 10 days because you were going to pitch back-to-back days in the bullpen. That's when we picked it out, and it was going to be a night game down in Clearwater. So Todd and I borrowed a couple balls, and I think I borrowed a glove from John Vukovic. And every night after work, we'd go across the street to that field across the street in Clearwater, and Todd would stand 40 feet in front of me. And I'm like, "Throw it harder, throw it harder, throw it harder." And he was right on top of me because I really needed to get my eyes going. But the upshot of that, Billy, is Todd's shoulder still hurts.
I have an 8-year-old son, and I'll play in the backyard catch with him. And about 10 throws in, my shoulder starts hurting. I go, "Oh, the freaking Billy Wagner story, man. It's still barking after like almost 20 years. I'm still.
It is 20 years.
Still feeling the pain from trying to get Jim so he could catch the baseball. But I remember Mick Billmeyer being there. Goofing
Jimmy Rollins was there.
Oh, everybody was thinking this was going to be a joke. I mean, I remember, and I was like, this is. I mean, it's you're not catching a guy who just got to the. Drafted, who's really not sure what's going on. I mean, all you're doing is, and so, the biggest thing was going to be a breaking ball. It'd be like me trying to catch. I remember when I went to Japan and was playing. I wanted to go play catch with Hoffman, and him throw me his changeup, and Flash throw me his breaking ball. And all of a sudden you're like, "Hey, okay, now don't tell me," and just start, and then you're like, "Oh shit." I mean, and it's all of a sudden that's what that all speed really does, and that really stands out to me as kind of like the feeling you had. There was no better feeling to sit there and see what everybody else sees. The problem was, I think you were like, "Oh, this is really hittable. I'm not getting it. And, where I'm sitting there catching Hoffman and going, how in God's name does anybody hit that? So, I mean, I appreciate you making me feel good.
I'll tell you what, though. So that day, the day comes, I was very anxious, obviously. And, I go out there. Now, Billy's all business. I mean, because I remember telling Billy, said, "Now, Billy, I want you to really, give me it all, right?" And he goes, "Don't worry, I ain't going to cheat you." And so we go out there on the half field, and he wants to warm up, do his long toss on the flat ground. So I got no mask on. And his first throw on flat ground, just to get loose from like probably 90 feet, I could hear it. And it was on my face like that, and I had no mask. It was on my face, and I'm like, "Holy good God, what have I just gotten into?"
Well, you can ask anybody. Nobody liked to play catch with me because I could be loose in 7 throws.
Mm-hmm.
My worst fear as a reliever was to have somebody go, "Oh, let's hold up and get the bases loaded." That was the worst fear for me. I'd literally tell coaches before when they call down, I'd go, "I'm ready," and they'd be like, "What?" I'm like, "Oh, by the time you walked out there, I'm ready." And stuff, because that was my biggest fear. I hated coaching. Well, we'll give him one more hitter. I wanted to make that decision right away. I'm good. Let's go.
That was a real thrill. And my goal was to write a good story to tell the reader that, show the reader, the fan, the work that you put into your craft on days you're not on in the game. And hopefully I succeeded. And my dad actually clipped that story and had it mounted and hung in his basement for years. And when he passed away, I grabbed it. Now it's on my podcasting wall. It's right over my shoulder, Billy.
That's pretty cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, so Billy, let me ask you this question. I mean, that was a great, that was really wonderful. Tell me about what it was like to pitch in Philadelphia, people staring at that, radar gun. You'd hit 99 and people were like, boo. And then, then you'd hit 100 and people were like, yeah. But tell us what's going through your mind during that time.
You know what I wish? I wish I could go back in that moment and been way more mature on how I handled that whole situation. But I tell you what I did appreciate about those moments is when you stepped out on that field, you better have your A game. You better be ready to go. There was no, you had a tough game. There was just a moment. And, you don't realize what 100 looks like. I mean, now you look up and it's happening a little bit more often. Now, I mean, when I was playing it wasn't as often. And so, for me, being a player in that moment, I didn't realize how awesome that was because, in my opinion, I'm chasing lions and tigers. That's who I'm facing. I've got the bonds. I've got these guys, and I ain't got time to, pat myself on the back and do those things. And so, looking back and sitting there thinking about, hey, when I stepped up there, everybody knew what was coming. There was no secret. And, people were excited to see that. I think, those were the moments I look back and went, man, you know what? I should have played that a little different. But, to know that you have that in your bag, that's pretty good. That's pretty fun.
So I gotta have to say something about the 100 that you threw and the hundreds that's being thrown now. And I know this for certain, that the 100 that's being thrown back then is not the same 100 that's being thrown now. That's probably like 104 to 106 in this day and age. And because they are not taking that reading, they're taking the reading at the plate back in the day. They're taking it out of the hand today. And so it's a totally different reading. And I wanted to point that out because I think it's something real. It's a real thing. Yes, more consistently, guys are throwing harder. There's no question about it. But it's a different 100. I think that if you had been tracked today with StatCast and that kind of stuff, you'd be tracked at a much higher number.
Well, I've heard that often. I think, you'd have seen guys, I think hard's hard. I think there's 96s that really play up and play hard, and I think, the numbers are always fascinating. But what really stands out is when you watch, and a guy that comes to mind to me, it just amazes me, is Woody Williams, who would go out there and throw 88, but he would always pitch in a triangle. And he would just sit there and go 86, 88, 86, 88, 88, 87. And just sit there, and all of a sudden you look up and you're in 6th, 7th inning. But that played up so much, and the velocities today. And I mean, the good thing is being able to talk to my son about guys. And I think he faced the kid from what was it, Anaheim, Ben Joyce, is that his name? No. And I mean, that's funny money. That's like, I mean, start swinging when he steps on the mound kind of stuff. I think there's something to it. I think there's a difference in the commitment to what you're. Can you imagine facing Aroldis Chapman in the 70s and 80s who would throw at your neck? I mean, that being like that. Where today's game, they're hey, it's you're in a box and stuff. I think these kids today the pitchers have to be a little different, unfortunately. But when I talk to big league hitters, they still say hard's hard.
Mm-hmm. Well, Bill, I mean, I was just looking at your stats today. I mean, obviously, you throwing hard in the slider and being a great pitcher, you had tremendous success. I was looking at your career numbers: 2.31 ERA in your career, 422 career saves. And this was the cool part. Your strikeout rate, 11.9 strikeouts per 9 innings. It's the best in baseball history of any pitcher with 900 more innings pitched. 187 opponents batting average against. Best in baseball history, any pitcher with over 900 more innings. Second lowest ERA ever, 900 more innings. I think it's the lowest by a lefty. Second lowest ERA. Yeah, like I said, by a lefty. So, just a tremendous career. And, you came so close to the Hall of Fame last year. I've read some things that you said after that last vote, said it's just such a wild roller coaster. Can you put into words what these weeks are like right now? Are you, is it?
I try really hard not to pay attention. That last year, I mean, as we went along through this 10-year grind, it's easy to see the growth. And then all of a sudden you get over to 60, and then everybody's like, oh, hey, that's nobody's ever not gotten in over 60. And then you get to 64 and you don't get, it was last year was tough emotionally, not so much just watching the process as much as, trying to stay out of that mindset of what's going to happen. I mean, coaching is my life, and I lean on that a lot, and especially in these days when there's the Hall of Fame talk. And so, last year, all of a sudden, NBC Nightly News shows up. I had no idea. And so I'm dealing with that, and they pull me off the side and go, hey, do you got a minute to talk about why you didn't make it? I'm on the I mean, and there's my team. It was very hard to sit there and go, wow, all right. Oh yeah, you only missed about 5 votes. Huh. Nice. Okay. It was tough, but I was blessed to be in a situation where I could create a coachable situation and how to handle and deal with it. But I really, inside, it was the most miserable thing I'd ever had gone through for myself personally. And so, it's such a great honor to be on that ballot. And there's so many people that's been on that ballot that haven't gotten to the opportunity that I have and stuff. But, as an athlete who gets to this far or past athlete, it's the ultimate. You've reached the top of the pyramid right now. To be in the Hall of Fame, you're talking about the greats of the greats. You're not talking about anything else. And, to think about yourself being in any conversation where HOF's at the end of your name is humbling and, is pretty sacred for me to look at.
Billy, I mean, here you are, this is exciting time. You keep going up on the ballot. I think you belong there. I hope you get there. I am a sucker for a good story. I just love a good story. I mean, I actually think they could make a movie about your life. I mean, here's this kid who breaks his dominant arm, his throwing arm, as a little boy, and says, "Okay, screw it. I'll learn to throw with my other arm and become like this great left-hander." It's an amazing story, and it shows like I've been around pro athletes like pretty much my whole life. They're special. They have this elite athleticism, but the really great ones have intangible character, competitiveness, drive. That's the word I'm looking for. And you have all those physical tools, but you had that drive to overcome that injury as a little kid, learn to throw left-handed and become the hardest throwing left-hander on the planet and one of the best relievers in the history of the game. My God, you were blessed with unbelievable intangibles. Where did all that come from?
Well, I really think that, it's very easy to sit there and go, hey, I was blessed by God, but it's obvious that I show it every time I went out on the mound that I was blessed. But I think it was also one of those situations where it allowed me to be on a platform and a lot of times that I, was humbled and went through some things that I think it was God's way of giving me the opportunity to be a coach, to talk to kids, to really talk about ways to do things different and a little bit better, to have the experience. And, and I had the blessing of playing with so many people that were, inspiring to me and meeting so many guys. I mean, you think about the people that you get involved with on a daily basis in pro baseball that you get to see, and you get to see walk in Robin Roberts. I remember taking Robin Roberts out to dinner. Holy cow. I mean, one of the greatest things in my life was sitting there talking to Sandy Koufax. Those are the things, but I think that gave me an insight that also God gave me the ability to have this journey and get 16 years in so that I could be a coach and sit there and tell kids and help them deal with today's anxieties and today's game that has manifest into something at times that is unrecognizable.
Hey, Billy, you and I have something in common, man. And we both had to teach ourselves to throw with our opposite hand. I was originally a left-handed thrower, and I wanted to be like my brother. So I turned I taught myself how to throw right-handed. Ended up just like my dad. I wanted to be an infielder and all that other stuff. Why didn't you teach me how to create some arm speed? Because I had the weakest arm on the planet in the outfield. Come on, man.
You know who else was a natural? Daryl Kyle was a natural left-hander, and me and him would trade gloves, and he would play catch. If you could only have seen how good he threw a curveball, his curveball was really good anyway. Then he could throw a left-handed curveball. There are so many guys that have that weirdness to them, and when it's amazing what athletes can do to survive and to get to where they want to go.
Well, your stories are one of the best ones ever, man, of all time, and I hope it culminates in the right spot, because you definitely deserve it. As far as I'm concerned, if I'm voting, man, you're a Hall of Famer to me, man.
No question. No, Billy, what does Hall of Fame night look like for you and the family? Hall of Fame day, announcement day.
Well, I'm not gonna know. That's too hard. I'm not very good at that. I know my kids will be keeping up with it. I know I'll be very anxious because I know what this is. I know what's on the line right here. And so it'll be difficult to find a way to get through to 6 o'clock. To be honest with you, I know I've had conversations with the Hall of Fame going, hey, it looks like this. We need to have a I'm like, nope, kiss of death. I'm not talking to nobody, and I'm not trying to be that guy, but I mean, my lifestyle growing up has always been waiting on the other shoe to fall. And I'm not going to sit here and put myself in such a situation where it's so disappointing that, it's that I have to, apologize for being upset. And so the less people around me, the better.
Well, I mean, we all wish you the best of luck. Just a couple of weeks ago, we were doing a show, and somebody asked us about like favorite people Jim and I covered, and you were one of the guys that immediately popped into our heads just because you were so much fun to talk to. And obviously
that was a good quote.
You, Billy, you were a great quote.
And we loved it in the front office. We loved your quotes in the front office.
I'd say right now that right there, when I talk to Will, that's exactly, I'm like, I don't care what's going on. You just say yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. You do not say anything else. I said, I've got a whole wall of things to not do. So, but that, in that environment, you go from Houston to Philly. I mean, you're talking about the opposite spectrum of everything. And then even if you had a bad game in Houston, I was never like, oh, you looked like you weren't very good tonight, or you didn't have those weird questions. Where in Philly, you could go out and punch out 3 with 9 pitching, and your velocity looked like it wasn't very good. And you're like, what? So those are things. These kids, for me, I had no idea. Everything was a poke at me, and so from being from Southwest Virginia to raising alpacas to you name it, and that's where I didn't have very good guidance in how to handle these things.
Well, Billy, if you hadn't spoke up, the Phillies bullpen might still be on the top level at Citizens Bank Park.
But every day
that's right. Sometimes that mouth that paid off.
It does pay off, exactly. Once in a while,
I remember after that.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my gosh, that was so great. The first On Deck series, I think it was after the first game, the On Deck series, you came down and like, that will not work. We need to move down.
Already getting crushed. I was like, bull crap. I am not dealing with that. You have one bad game. I got so, but it was funny because, you could just say, I would much rather the visitors. Now, granted, when I make that decision, I'm thinking I'm going to be in Philadelphia for the next 10 years and I'll be retired. And I won't have to deal with this, and then next thing you know, you're dealing with it constantly. I remember when I came back, I just put a chair right out in the middle of the bullpen and I just said, have at me. Go get me. And they won me out for 4 games. So, but what's funny though, when I'm around Philly fans, they are way more, there's so much. I probably had 2 of the best seasons of my career in Philadelphia, and they also, the fans are. So, when I do stuff, I come through and I'm doing a signing. There's always a positive to it. I mean, there's some, but when you're playing and you're young and you're immature, you don't know that passion, what that really means, and so. when you start talking to guys after you retire, people are like, "Oh, we loved you," and you're like, "What?" And you don't realize it. But I think that's what I think that is something for me that as I went through this process, maturing and understanding that these guys, what they do on a daily basis, to come watch me play, to do this, this is important, and this is their way to vent. But at my stage and my immaturity and my where I was not used to that was a completely different. I mean, that was a constant attack, and so those are things that if I could talk to kids coming through rougher cities like Philly and Boston and New York, things like that, I would be like, hey, it's never personal. I would really make that a big difference, because I mean, there's a tendency to make that really personal when it really wasn't. And sometimes you just need somebody to go, hey, it's not a big thing.
If I could ask you really quick, because I know we're taking up a lot of your time, but I'm so enjoying this. You mentioned having 2 good years in Philly. 05 was just an unbelievable year, 75 appearances, a 1.5 ERA. But you also had a great year in Atlanta the year you won.
I thought you were going to talk about my batting average.
Raked.
Charlie Manuel gave me, I went 1 for 1, and I came in and I looked at Charlie and I said, Charlie, how hard can it really be? And if you'll pick, he got me in more games to hit, and at the end of the year we had an 8-run lead, and he put me in to hit, so I would strike out and be below 300. How about that? That's what Virginia friends do for you.
Well, he wanted to be the best hitter from Southwest Virginia.
Well, there was never a doubt there.
But that last year in Atlanta, you were great. And
he was awesome.
I've had enough. You could have probably pitched 3 more years, right?
You know what? I probably could have pitched a year or 2 more, but there was a point where, you knew as a player it's enough. I don't know what it'd have been like. I mean, I think people always sit there and go, well, you pitched well. Well, I could have pitched 2 more years and maybe I do well. Or what if I go out there and pitch 2 more years and it's not well? So, honestly, I told Bobby Cox before the season started, I said, listen, I just want to let you know that I'm not coming back. This is it. Please don't tell anybody. So by the time I got to my locker, he'd already told everybody that I was retiring and stepping away. So he didn't make it. And I think it was easy because it was one of those things. I wasn't going to change or do anything. But I will say that I really feel like I relaxed a little, really looked around a little bit more. I really enjoyed things a little bit more, knowing that I was blessed to go out on my own terms. But I mean, there were so many nights I'm sitting there. The Toradol shots that I was getting in my back, my hips, my ankles. I mean, we could sit there. I mean, it was one of those things. I mean, I was wrapped up in tape from my ankles through my groin, and I was like, man, the only thing that wasn't hurting was my shoulder and my elbow. And so it was just one of those things. I said, my kids are older. They're getting ready to go into that high school. It was important for me to be a dad first. I'd like to think that I could have played longer, but I'm happy with where I left. I don't regret what I've done.
Well, you definitely left your mark, man. You left your legacy, and I have a great deal of respect for you to step away from when you did, because that's a personal thing, and that's something that I appreciate that you did and that you owned.
I agree. I agree with Ruben. You left your mark, not only as a player and a pitcher, but as a man, Billy. I have great respect and appreciation for you.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, we wish you the best of luck. Hopefully there'll be a nice celebration next month, and then we'll see you in Cooperstown. We'll all be pulling for you.
Oh, I appreciate that. Look forward to that.
Thanks again to Billy Wagner for the time, and good luck to Billy. January 21st, 6 p.m. Eastern, MLB Network. Hopefully he gets the call to Cooperstown. We'll be back later, guys, for more Phillies talk. Thanks, everybody. The Phillies Show is brought to you by the Foul Territory Network. Subscribe to The Phillies Show on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. If you like us, give us a review. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, X, Facebook, and Threads. Find Ruben's analysis before, during, and after Phillies games on NBC Sports Philadelphia, on the Sports Radio 94 WIP Morning Show, and MLB Network. Find Jim at allphly.com. Find me at MLB.com, the Phillies Beat newsletter, and MLB Network.